Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
Brittany, how are you doing this?
Good morning. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. I'm Representative Mike Derby, the lead co-chair, along with my co-chair Senator Otten. And as we do every morning, we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator Lapke, would you please start us? Thank you, Senator. I'd like to welcome all of our internet listeners and those of you watching on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. A reminder, please make sure your cell phones are off. And lobbyists must be wearing badges for the organization they're representing. And testifiers must sign the guest register and have pages distribute any handouts they may have. And all testimony and questions will be addressed through the chair. This time I'd like to ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons. Here. Auk. Casson. Here. Moore. Here. Billhauer. Here. Carly. Boyda. Here. Jorgensen.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Sharda.
Here.
Mucky. Here. Zigmund. Colbeck.
Here.
Norstrup. Lapke.
Here.
Otten.
Here.
Derby.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any minutes to approve? Representative Colbeck.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes of Wednesday, March 11th, 2026.
Motion by Representative Colbeck, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we've got some pages this morning. If you could please come up front and turn the microphone on and introduce yourself. We'd love to know where you're from and what your future plans are and what your favorite hobby is. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Jace Fernandez. I'm a senior at Kadoka Area High School. In the future, I'm going to attend SDSU to study political science. And for hobbies, I do theater and stuff like that.
Thank you.
My name is Brody. I am a senior at T Area High School.
Go Titans.
Yes. And next year I will be going to USD for history, majoring in history. And then I also do theater, and specifically oral interpretation as a hobby.
Great. Go Yotes.
Good morning. My name is Selena Valeris. I'm a junior here at T.F. Riggs High School. After high school, I plan to go to SDSU and afterwards going to Air Force. And for my hobbies, I am in Civil Air Patrol and shooting sports.
Wow. Senator Howard, do you have any comments on that? Well done. Welcome. So glad you were here this session. Thank you very much. Are there any introductions, personal privileges, or announcements? Okay, seeing none. Today we are doing consideration of letters of intent. Traditionally, we've done this on veto day, but we had a couple that were ready to roll. But just a reminder, we will have another bite at the apple on veto day, so those of you that need a little more time doing additional letters of intent, that's all well and good. So we'll start with our first. It's Nest Predator Bounty Program parameters. And is there a way to bring that up?
Oh, yes, sorry. Boom. Nope, wrong one.
Okay, so we will start with proponents. Are there proponents for this LOI of the Nest Predator Bounty Program parameters? Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Representative and members of Joint JCA, we'll say that. My name is Senator Tom Pischke, come from District 25, and come before you with this letter of intent today. This really stems from a conversation that the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee had earlier this session in regards to Senate Bill 148. And I didn't bring documents for you today to look at, but if you wanted to go to the documents within that committee, we had a lot of handouts, a lot of extensive information as to why the bounty nest program should be eliminated. During that discussion, it was actually over two committee hearings. A lot of discussion if we should keep it, if we should not keep it. We finally landed on the idea that we should keep the program but give it a haircut. And so that's why this letter of intent came. We had thought about sending a letter to the GF&P Commission to give it a haircut. But then after further discussions, I decided to go this route after some talks with the LRC. So the idea was to cut it in half to make it $250,000 instead of $500,000, save some money of the license holders, and use that money to be for habitat instead. But we still wanted to keep the program for the kids because we heard a lot of testimony and a lot of emails came in saying that the kids like to utilize the program. We thought it was important to keep the kids involved in trapping, and so that they would get that interest and continue doing that as an adult. So that's kind of where this idea came from, to keep it for children 17 and under, and then a maximum of 25 tails. So if you're doing it at $10 a tail, that would be $250 for each child for that season. and then again, give the program a haircut from $500,000 to $250,000, and use that other money to be placed into Habitat. I think any biologist would tell you that Habitat is the #1 factor when it comes to having more critters, in essence, right? Having more birds, having more deer, having more of everything. Habitat is the #1 factor when it goes into that. So that was the idea, is to use that money for Habitat instead of the bounty program. Now, I will acknowledge that the GFMP Commission last Friday did make some tweaks to this. I'm not necessarily opposed to those tweaks, but again, this letter of intent was drafted with the idea that I had no idea what the GFMP Commission was going to do. So I know there's other people that want to talk about this as well, and so I will stand by for questions, but would like you to at least consider this haircut. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just say, I will not be moving this letter of intent, but I do want us to go ahead and hear from the proponents and opponents, because GFMP did, as he referenced, they met last Friday. #1 on this letter of intent, they absolutely took care of. #2, instead of 25 tails per child, they did it 59 tails per household. And then they did reduce from 500,000 down to 200,000 for the tails that are normally within this program. And then they started the coyote program, but the secretary can talk to that as well. So, but I did want to take this opportunity still to let us hear from these guys.
Thank you, Senator. Are there additional proponents for this LOI as it's written for the Nest Predator Bounty Program parameters? Additional proponents? Are there any online? Nope. Additional proponents? Seeing no additional proponents? Oh, we do have. Okay. Welcome. Good morning, and please identify yourself.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, my name is John Simpson. I represent myself. I live here in Pierre, and I appreciate being here this morning. I haven't registered yet. I'll do that momentarily. When Senate Bill 148 was introduced, I was a strong proponent to eliminate the predator bounty program. This letter of intent, I think, is in the right direction. I'm not sure it goes far enough, but I can accept it the way it is, and hopefully as we get a few years into the program, see how well the trapping recruitment proposal works for the department and how the success rate works on harvesting coyotes that time of the year. We can take another look at it, but in the time being, I can accept this proposal, and I hope you can too. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional proponents? Okay. Seeing none. Opponents? Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kevin Roblin here, Secretary of Game Fish and Parks. It's a pleasure being here this morning on the last day of session, so excellent. Yes, so last Thursday, we did put Nest Predator Bounty Program on the commission agenda. The commission convened last Thursday, Friday, in Pierre, actually, and we had a really good discussion. There was a public hearing on the Nest Predator Bounty Program. There was some recommendations to our commission from the department to make some changes to the Nest Predator Bounty Program. Those changes were vetted very thoroughly. The commission did act on those changes, and those changes are the Nest Predator Bounty Program will be a youth trapping recruitment program for the age of 17 and under. The cap per household is $590, so there could be individuals that receive less than $25 or 25 tails. If there's 3 kids in a household, obviously that would then preclude them from getting over that 25 tails per household. It's again, or 25 tails per individual. It's $590 per household. That's what the cap is set at. The program threshold is $200,000, as mentioned here just previously. The commission did make that modification. And then, on top of that, there was a modification to include then the other $300,000 to go towards a coyote bounty program. That coyote bounty program will start April 1st. It'll be $30 a tail. We're hoping that we can get some additional pressure on the coyote population because the fur price is definitely plummeted. There's obviously a lot of coyotes on the landscape. This is an effort to mitigate livestock loss, help those egg producers out there protect those newborn calves and lambs, and the other part of this is to enhance fawn survival of both mule deer, white-tailed deer, and antelope fawns. We are seeing some low deer densities across South Dakota in general, and endozootic hemorrhagic disease is the reason for that. We had a lot of EHD, many of you know it as that, and we're trying to bring those herds back. There is no disputing.
What is EHD?
Endozootic hemorrhagic disease.
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah, it's a hemorrhagic disease that's spread by a biting fly called the Cosoides fly. It breeds in mud flats. It happens during wet-dry cycles. We've had a pretty bad experience or exposure to it the last couple of years across South Dakota. On top of that, there is no disputing that habitat is the number one management tool to increasing abundance of wildlife populations. And for that reason, for every $1 of the bounty program that we spend $50 on habitat and access. We spend about $25 million on habitat and access a year of hunting and fishing license dollars. And that's exactly how we're paying for this bounty program as well. This is hunting and fishing license dollars that are being used to pay for this bounty program. There's no tax money involved here. It is actually the license money received from trapping licenses, hunting licenses, and fishing licenses. Again, it's every $1 we spend on the bounty, $50 we spend on habitat and access. Habitat is the key priority to the agency. So with that, I'll take any questions, but I'm hopeful, and thank you to the good senator over here for making the comments about tabling. I do think the commission did address most of these, if all of these, in the letter, and just thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Senator, comments or rebuttal?
Yeah, just briefly. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation that we have even beyond this year. You know, obviously we'll see how the numbers draw out, and you know what the participation is in the coyote program. So we'll just have to see what happens there. I will concede that that there is too many coyotes, and the numbers for deer are down in areas. The numbers for antelope are down in areas, and so maybe this is an idea to help out with that. Some argue that habitat's more important than that. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation, and so we'll just see where it goes from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Representative Sharna.
I have a question for the secretary. Is the coyote bounty for any age or just for the 17 and younger?
Through the chair. Representative, the coyote bounty is for any age, starting April 1st and running through July 1st. That is the coyote bounty, I guess, eligibility. So anybody then, the household cap for that is also $590. So let's say you have an individual father, son that are both coyote hunters, and they go out, they live under the same household. The cap for that program per household is also $590.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Lapke?
Same question.
Okay. Representative Auk? Okay. Any new questions?
Yes.
Representative Auk.
For the secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the conversation we had earlier this morning. Could you explain to the body how the county kind of plays into this, if there is? Because truly, not so much the other tails, but, well, I guess when it comes to pheasant nests, because we have seen a reduction in pheasants and deer, and it is because of that EHD, which affects cattle also, may I remind you. So could you talk about the 5 cents per head per county, if you can opt in and opt out of that, please? That also goes towards a little bit towards this program.
Yeah, through the chair. So the good representative there is referring to the county assessment, and there is a county assessment that the county can opt in to or opt out of, and this is for the animal damage control program. It is in state statute. It's per head basis. So forever how many head you have in that county, residing in that county, of cattle and sheep, that's how the formula is put together, and then that money comes into the department in the form of the Animal Damage Control Fund. That Animal Damage Control Fund, though, is specifically used for our wildlife damage management program, which is our state trappers. So when you see the airplanes flying, when you see the state trappers on the ground dealing with the coyote issues that those producers call us, we then send folks out to help with those coyote issues, in a sense where there's a lost lamb or a lost calf. That's how some of that program is funded. Typically, we receive about $300,000 from the counties every year, annually, but we do spend about $1.8 million on that program annually. So it doesn't cover the cost of the entire program. It covers a portion of that program, and that's how those county assessments work.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Yes, Senator Miskimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are animals in confined animal feeding operations excluded from the numbers in this program?
Through the chair. I would have to get back to you on that, Senator. We were just talking about that, Representative Ock and I were, and I do not believe they're excluded. I think they're part of that, so that would be something I will get back to you on.
Any additional committee questions? Okay, Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Commissioner, for those of us that have CRP, we know that in the next, well, it started already, that the CRP payments from the federal government are going to go down probably as much as a half of what they are today. So that's going to eliminate, I know for a fact, it's going to eliminate a lot of CRP, which we use as habitat for the pheasants. But I've also noticed that this year, for example, that our coyote population has been unbelievable. I mean, it's been higher than I've ever seen it. And of course, that just relates back down to the loss of pheasants, of course, you know, because the coyotes got to eat something. But have you taken that into consideration at all? Because we're going to be losing some habitat with that loss of that CRP, and I know that's coming, and because it's, you can make more money by cash renting the land out than you can make it on CRP. So, I mean, so whether or not, you know, I'd like to see you stay with the program that you guys have presented from your commission, to see it, give it a day or two or a year or two to work before we decide to go and change it some more if we need to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, you are 100% accurate when it comes to habitat is expensive, and it gets more expensive by the year, it seems. There is a somewhat conversation about a reduction in CRP rental rates. However, it depends on the county. It depends on the soil type. It depends on a lot of other things, the erodibility index. So there's an equation, a formula that goes into actually your CRP rental rate, if you will. We're more optimistic where it's not going to be adjusted too negatively, where it's still going to be a pretty good, fair deal to the producer to enroll in CRP. The enrollment period is right now, actually. It runs through March 21st. So if there's anybody in this room that's interested in CRP, head to your FSA office. But there is some pretty good opportunities out there. There's also a program called CREP, and CREP does pay very, very well, and that is CRP plus public access, and that's something that we're really pushing hard in the Jim River Valley and the Big Sioux River Valley. So those are some exciting programs that are out there. But ultimately, yes, we do have a working lands program. It's essentially a state CRP type program that we enroll producers in. It's through the Second Century Habitat Fund. It's in very high demand, and what that is, it's essentially a flat rate of $75 an acre, and then it's $45 an acre on the west side of the river for marginal row crop being converted back into perennial grass, and that's been in high demand. Actually, the funds we have for that program are not enough, we'll put it that way, because the demand is so high. So there are other programs we're trying to lift up, and they are definitely being pursued as we speak. But habitat is the focus of the agency, and it definitely will continue to be that way moving forward.
Very good. Any additional questions? Okay, well, if I heard the sponsor correctly, that this will not be moved, so we can move on. Thank you, Senator. Okay. We're going to, the next LOI is opioid settlement funds. And we're going to hand out a hard copy of it. I think it's just easier to look at. But just a little background. Senator Otten and I have been very involved with the opioid settlement funds that are coming to the state of South Dakota, approximately $99 million that our Attorney General and other Attorney Generals were able to sue Big Pharma and get these payments over a number of years, up until 2040 or so. We've got $99 million coming in now. Under the Purdue settlement, there'll be another $60+ million coming for payments for the opioid settlement. And we've been involved. We put together a opioid settlement summit a week ago, and we had the Mayor of Rapid City, the Sheriff of Pennington County, Mayor Tenhaken from Sioux Falls joined us via speakerphone. We had the Attorney General there. Both of us were there, along with Secretary Althoff and Laura Ringling from the Governor's Office. And out of that, we had a very robust discussion on the current process and where the needs are and how the money is going to be used in the future. The mayors of Sioux Falls and Rapid City expressed how they'd like to see some of those funds distributed primarily in block grants to each of those cities for existing operations like the Link and the Care Campus in Rapid City. A little different than the current application process. And so robust discussion on that. And Senator Otten, I'll let you, why don't you chime in and then we'll go through the LOI.
What was unique about this is the openness of all parties able to listen. And we know that there is a need there. And the problem is how do we get the resources there and get the timing just right? And so we're working through all those parameters. But I think that we're on the right, finally, the right glide path, if you will, of getting this settled and getting it out to the people that actually need the help.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Otten. I think one of the big items that was talked about was what is a opioid nexus? The Attorney General was there, and nexus means what kind of programs can access these dollars. And Attorney General basically provided a broader vision of the nexus and versus what's currently being done, and that would include what's being done in Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And he actually read the language in the settlement, and when was asked the question, would he back up, the state in regards to broadening the nexus, and his answer was yes. So, that Laura Ringling from the Governor's Office has put together this LOI, and I would at this time ask Commissioner Twilliger to come up and I'm not sure if you're a proponent or opponent, but you can identify yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jim Twilliger with the Bureau of Finance and Management. Yeah, I think this letter of intent is appropriate, based on some of the conversations we've had the last couple of days, and making sure that all parties are working together on making sure we're allocating these funds over the next, really in the next, 15 plus years to do as much good as we can and identifying where the needs are and the gaps are. And so, we're supportive of this letter of intent and continuing to move down that path.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you address the $9 million other fund expenditure authority and how that was arrived at?
Mr. Chairman, I believe, I'd have to go back and look, but I believe that allows the expenditure of, the existing funds and probably the funds that'll be received in the next year or two. And then we'll, continue to have those conversations because as we, mentioned yesterday, while the dollar amount for the settlement is a big dollar amount, 30% of it goes directly to the local governments, so only about 70% comes into the state, and it's strung out through like 2040. And so the $9 million, I think, deals with what's available now and probably what it'll come in the next couple of years, and so we can continue to address these funds and make sure that they're invested in the right places.
Okay. Thank you. Additional proponents for this letter of intent regarding opioid settlement funds? Any additional proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Okay, open it up for committee questions. Senator Foster.
Thank you. So has any consideration, well, when who was all invited to the opioid settlement summit? I heard was like, yeah, who was all invited to that?
I can answer that. I actually put it together. It was a relatively short notice situation, about 4 days heads up. And the two mayors of Rapid City and Sioux Falls, the sheriff of Pennington County, the attorney general, the two chairs, Secretary Altoff, and Laura Ringling from the governor's office.
I guess, why weren't maybe smaller communities or tribal communities, or why wasn't it like a more diverse cross-section of South Dakota who are being impacted by the opioid epidemic?
Thank you for the question. Because we were, at the time, we were addressing specifically Rapid City and Sioux Falls' concerns, specifically on how their applications and the monies we're be handling for those markets. I think moving forward, I would appreciate, let's do another summit, a little broader as we move through this process. And I would appreciate your help. Yes.
Has any consideration gone, well, I guess the 9 million, and I'm not clear on the total amount of funds that have already been awarded, and then what we're opening up for other fund expenditures. Is that total 9 million, or is that 9 million in addition to other awards that have already gone out?
Great question, Commissioner. I do have a one-pager I could get that addresses that. Would you be able to answer that off the top of your head?
Mr. Chairman, I would describe the 9 million as additional awards that will go out in the future.
Can you give me a total amount of what was already awarded in addition to this 9 million?
Mr. Chair, yeah, based off of memory, again, the funds that have been received at the state level to date is approximately 24 million. Of that, 12 million is yet to be allocated. The other 12 million has been allocated or obligated, with a good portion of those sent out and some that, have certain requirements. And so it's about half obligated and half not. And then, as I mentioned in testimony, then over the next 15 years or so, we expect we'll get approximately $4 million per year, give or take.
What?
Follow up.
So what we're dealing with right now is with the money that's been already either allocated or awarded is about, and the 9 million is about $33 million that we're looking at within this block of time, correct?
Senator Foster, there is I provided with you a dashboard that's online, and that's the copy, and I think those numbers track with what you just said.
So one of my concerns is that we are actually, both the legislature and the executive, as well as commissions and even mayors, could look significantly different by next year. So by deploying a large portion right now and allocating it, we're basically forcing the next potential, changeover to continue with a vision that they didn't create. And so my concern is that, one, just the lack of cross-section that was involved in these conversations and funding existing programs. I would say the existing programs that exist are kind of not getting the results that we'd really like to see. And I don't know if more money would necessarily improve those outcomes. We are both, like I said, on the cusp of some pretty good change at every governmental level, as well as innovation in technology, as well as normalizing other treatments. So I just am really hesitant to approve dispersing kind of this large group of funds when there's so much uncertainty and possible turnover. And then also lack of inclusion that's gone into this process so far.
Senator Foster, I'd like you to refer to the letter as it's written in the middle of the third paragraph. It talks about, is the intent of JCA that these grants be provided in a manner that supports substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery services across the state, with the Department of Social Services working cooperatively with Sioux Falls, Pennington County, and jurisdictions throughout South Dakota to identify communities' priorities and fund effective community-based solutions directly. So it's very broad, but it does highlight Sioux Falls and Pennington County because that was the meeting we had. I hope that helps. Who else? Representative Casson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'm not reading this, or how is this different than what we're currently doing?
Good question. Primarily, I think what it says is the word that you need to look at is that these funds be deployed broadly. And that was the issue that we had, is we were deploying them in a very narrow path, and then meeting with the Attorney General and the opioid nexus, it allows a more broader use of these funds moving forward.
So the goal, follow up. So the goal then, we had this in this conversation early on in session when we talked about opioid settlement. There was kind of there was kind of one side that thought the fund should go out faster, and then maybe more of a drip, 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 drip kind of thing. I guess what we're trying to do, are we trying to is this trying to push the funds out faster? Is that what we're trying to do here?
Well, what I realized thank you, Representative, is these funds are coming in a lot slower than I thought they would. And so originally we were looking at doing the 20 million, kind of a block grant for each city. Well, those funds aren't available, and they're not coming in as fast as we thought. So that's why I pulled those sheet off. Commissioner, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jim Terwilliger with BFM. I think the change, and probably to, reference what the chairman already spoke about, is I think up until recently, there's been a little bit more narrow view of what should be tackled, and with the help, assistance of the chair and the Attorney General and other folks that have really looked at the settlement, that could be viewed a little bit more broadly. But right now, I would say that the process is still very much the same. I believe there's a task force that's set up that reviews all this, and we really need to think about this strategically to make sure, if we're identifying certain gaps, that we can fill those gaps and other things strategically. So I think it's important that the view was a little bit more narrow. I think we can look at it more broadly. That's what we're going to look at into the future, with the same process that's established right now, but probably taking a little bit more broader view of what these could be used for to make sure that we're getting the best investment as a state that we can. So we're looking at things a little bit more broadly, and I think that's where this letter of intent is trying to hit at.
Follow up?
Yes.
And so I'm just making sure I read this right. So we're kind of taking a broader view. The Attorney General did make a very good point about the nexus and what he thought the nexus, he could make a nexus on between a lot of things and in the opioid crisis. It names Sioux Falls, Pennington County, and other jurisdictions in South Dakota. So we're not specifically directing things to Sioux Falls and Pennington County. They're just named, and then everybody else too. I mean, is that the way this was written?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Let's see. I think as Representative Jorgensen was next, and then Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, if someone knows, but my understanding is there's a separate tribal settlement. Is that true? I did some research that said there was, but I don't know if South Dakota is included in that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure of the answer to that. I apologize.
Senator Vilhauer.
Sure. I got a question. I think I've asked before, and I forget what the answer has been. There's 30% of this that comes locally, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay,
That's my understanding.
now. Is that still administered by the state or through the state?
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to find out for sure, but my understanding is it goes directly to locals. I will find that out for certain, though.
And a follow-up and a comment now as well. Because I'm wondering, because I know Cottington County, my county, has got some pretty robust programs in place that have been funded by this. And I'm just concerned is that, will this somehow impact the allocation or the process for the local funds that are out there?
Mr. Chairman, the intent of this is not to do anything, change anything with the local portion. This is just dealing with the state portion.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Senator Carly.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up on one of the other questions. Is it for Sioux Falls or Pennington County, or is it not? Because I kind of hear a mixed feeling of that. I mean, it's written on the letter, but it's pretty broad statement there. So I guess, can there be any clarity on if this is specifically directed to those two, or if it's not, how is it directed in any way to those particular counties?
Mr. Chair, I think it's all inclusive. It's not specifically directing any amount to a certain community. I don't think that's the intent of the settlement. And that's why there's kind of an established process through where there's a task force that's set up to review these proposals. And as these proposals are put together, as long as there's been it's a good proposal that's helping, fill gaps or meet necessary needs as it relates to opioids. I think any community can come in and put together a proposal, and we want those proposals to come forward, but we also want them to be well thought out and really establish and help out where these funds are coming from, where they should be directed. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's not specifically at any one community. It's really statewide, and we invite those proposals to come in through the existing process.
Follow up.
Okay, and so then how is this any different than what exists now? Because we heard testimony last year and this year from DSS that, hey, we're taking bids, we're getting feedback. Certainly Pennington and Sioux Falls could submit, or Minnehaha could submit those. So how is this letter any different than what has already existed in that they could already do that?
Mr. Chair, and I think Mr. Chairman hit on this, is where I think the key is I think this has been viewed a little bit more broadly, or more narrowly up until now. With the letter of intent and with the Assistant Attorney General reviewing the settlement, seeing what other states are doing, we can look at this a little bit more broadly and what it can be used for. So we intend to do that in the coming years and reviewing future grant awards. So it's a changing of view from a narrow view of what the funds should be used for to a little bit more broadly with the assistance of the Attorney General's office and the interpretation of the settlement documents and all of that. So I do believe it's a change of scope of view of what the funds can be used for, and so we can help shape what that looks like as it comes through the existing process.
Okay, so if they had, Minnehaha or Pennington County had previously submitted anything to DSS, was it so narrow that they would have been rejected previously last year and this year when that got brought up, or what would have happened?
I haven't been involved in all those details. I haven't reviewed the application, so I don't know the answer to that. Maybe the chair has some comments.
Rapid City put in 9 applications, and I'm not sure what the total amount was, but I think it was between 18 and 20 million. And their position is they would rather have a block grant scenario and use those monies for the care campus and use them for existing programs that are already successful in their world. And so they went down the application process because that was the only way to do it, but it's really not, in their mind, it's not the ultimate goal. It's not where they would like to utilize the monies. So this helps that process. Yes, follow up.
Okay, one more different track, the dollar amount. Could you just let us know, I know the contract itself, I think we've confirmed we're getting 98 million, I believe. Maybe you could confirm that number. Maybe you could also confirm how much we've actually received so far. That would be a second number. Third number would be how much is in the bank. And then fourth number is how much we'd have by the end of the next fiscal year.
To answer that, Senator Foster, could you hand those dashboards to the good senator? These are all online. There's a website called, what's the website up on the top there? on the website?
South Dakota National Opioid Settlement Fund. I have seen this, but I just wanted a confirmation. So this shows 98 million projected payment. So you would confirm that that's how much is guaranteed we'll get. Second is actual payments received, 32 million is what we have received so far. What's not on here is how much is in the bank, how much we have that hasn't been deployed yet. And then fourth, statewide share and localized share, 23 million and 9 million. So we have 32 million in the bank.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I already referenced those numbers, but yes, that shows those. And I want to clarify one thing, the 98 million, that's the total. The state share is approximately 70% of that, okay, which is in reference to the expenditure authority. I did verify the 30% does not flow through or come through state government. It goes directly to locals. So this doesn't have anything to do with that local share. The local share is reported. We get the information on what gets sent out, but it doesn't flow through state government. And so those numbers, the 98 million, about 70% of that would come through the opioid settlement state share in reference to this motion sheet.
Okay. Okay, and then we'll do Senator Foster, Representative Alk, and then we need to leave 15 minutes for the last LOI.
Okay, so then the 9 million, why the 9 million was picked, is that related to the localized share value there? And if that's the case, then where does the 23 million statewide share go?
Can you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Okay, so on the LOI, 9 million is indicated, that was the number that was picked. Was that picked because the localized share is 9.6 million on this dashboard?
Mr. Chair.
And what's the 23 million
The
for?
expenditure authority has nothing to do with the local share. There's no funds that flow through state government. There's no authority attached to the local share. That gets distributed directly to local governments, doesn't flow through state government, okay? So the 9 million expenditure authority adds to, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but there's some expenditure authority in the existing base. And so right now, we've received 24 million as a state. Approximately 12 million of that is unobligated, so it would use expenditure authority as it's granted out. So that was where the 9 million would come from, in addition to what's existing in their base. I don't have that in front of me. And we get about $4 million state share approximately per year.
They have 3 million in their base, so 3 plus 9 is 12. Okay, Senator Foster and then Representative Alk. Okay, perfect, thank you. Representative Alk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a graph or Excel spreadsheet which communities have received dollars from the state and what the dollar amount is? Do we have that? I've got your website pulled up. I'm not seeing it.
Mr. Chair, I'm sure we have all that information and we can compile that, get it to your staff so it can be distributed to the whole committee.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion. Senator Otten.
I would move to adopt.
We have a motion by Senator Otten, second by Senator Lapke to adopt the LOI for the opioid settlement funds. Any further discussion? Senator Foster.
Thank you. So I'm going to resist this motion. I like the part of expanding the nexus to opening up, widening the scope of what these grant dollars are eligible for, but I am going to resist on the fact that authorizing an additional $9 million, again, when we could possibly look significantly different next year with different leadership, definitely a different mayor in Sioux Falls. And we haven't had a chance to even see what this first amount of funds, what the benefit of that is. So I'm going to resist this based on just that alone. And my concern is not just reservations, because you are correct, reservations will have their own, but I'm also a representative of, small communities and looking at local shares across the state and how they're affected by this. That was alleviated a bit on the local share, so I'm just resisting solely on additional 9 million expanding authority. So that's
Well, I feel compelled to answer that. Commissioner, do you want to explain once again what the authority, why we need the $9 million in additional authority?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The additional $9 million in authority will give the Department of Social Services the authority needed for the funds that will be received up through the end of fiscal year 2027. Okay? No more than that. So it's the projected through the end of the budget year 2027, which is the general bill that hopefully you're adopting today. And so that'll flow through the existing process where any community is invited to come in and put in an application within the parameters that are kind of laid out, and there's all kinds of information out on the Department of Social Services website. I haven't been to one of these task force meetings and reviewed applications. I just haven't been part of that process, but there's an existing process to review any community to come in and apply for the grant funds.
Representative Casson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Representative Auk, I just emailed you the dash. If you go to dss.st.gov and go there, opioid settlement community grants program, there'll be a link for the South Dakota opioid settlement dashboard, and it has all of this information, proved uses, statewide share projections, funds received, and overview. So I know they talked about a dashboard when we were here. So I mean, it is live and it's online.
I mean, as part of the settlement, we're required to do all this and track all the grants and report all that up. I mean, it's all part of that settlement as well.
Okay, last question, Senator Miskimmons.
Comment? After listening to the Attorney General, and he spoke of the urgency because of the existing need for treatment and care currently. So I'm really pleased that this settlement or this group was held, and I realize the expediency, the short-term nature of it, but I think it's a great move for South Dakota to get these needed dollars out for treatment of our existing need.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore. Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Aye.
Howard. Foster. No. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
Aye.
Carly votes aye. No.
Carly votes no. 14 yeas, 3 nays.
The motion to adopt the opioid settlement funds LOI hereby passes. Okay, moving on. Provider inflation of 1.4%. Can bring that up. And we have proponents for the provider inflation of 1.4%.
Is this just called?
We have one person online, is that correct? We have one person online? Okay, we've got 10 minutes. We have a hard stop at 10 o'clock.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Terry Dash. I serve as the Executive Director for the South Dakota Council of Community Behavioral Health. I think by this point, I'm known to all of you. I would like to start off by thanking everybody on this committee, regardless of what your stance was, for considering our asks and needs for this coming year. The 1.4%, certainly not what we perceived that we needed, but it certainly is going to be of great assistance. And I give you my personal oath that every dime will be properly spent to support a meaningful safety net for vulnerable populations in South Dakota. The second thing I'd like to do preceding this is to thank the chairs for appointing the Medicaid and Community-Based Services Methodology Solutions Work Group this year. Mr. Chair, I'd like to just make a suggestion out of hand that you consider continuing that forum. I thought it was extremely meaningful for at least a couple of reasons. One, it took all of the provider interests and it kept them in pack. And it considered their needs in conjunction with one another's needs, and it focused on the greatest needs. And it asked everybody to back you know, whatever the recommendations were that came out of that. The second thing is it focused on solutions. Instead of being a whine fest, it wound up being, I'm sorry for the levity, Mr. Chair, but that's typically what it's been. I mean, if you're like me, every year I think you get a little tired of waking up to the radio alarm and hearing Sonny and Cher singing "I've Got You, Babe." It's the same drama that replays year over year. And the idea this time was, let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about how we can make this better in the long run. Well, when you look at an agency like I serve, the agencies that I serve, there are two things that are important from a budgetary standpoint. One is to have a sufficient allocation of funding appropriated to us to support the described services that we're asked to deliver to the volume that the demand dictates. That's what we refer to as our annual appropriation in our contract. The other is you have to have a meaningful rate structure in order to access those funds. That's our mechanism for drawing down funds in a fee-for-service system. One of the things that arrived in my mind this year is that all the providers were saying basically the same thing. We can engage in a concerted effort to derive an accurate methodology. That methodology is going to start slipping if it becomes irrelevant over time. And the fastest way that it becomes irrelevant is for the rates to not keep pace with actual experienced inflation and costs. Now, if you know me, I can talk for a long time about this, but let it suffice to be said that rates are extremely important to keeping the relevance of the methodology intact in the first place. If we had a properly constructed methodology, unless things substantively change in terms of service-related criteria, if the inflation policy takes into account the prospective increases in the cost of delivering those services so that we're not dwelling in history on a historical rate-based format, if the rates are doing that, you only have to do that rate review every 5 years. And when you come back and you look at it, it should be basically relevant. Well, right now, if you take a look at the report that you receive every year by virtue of 2228, you can see that we're a long ways, almost universally, from 100% of methodology. So I think the challenge in the future is going to be to continue to work together the best we can to resolve that difference. But I think one of the things that that will help us immediately is that when we are able, when you are able, when Mr. Terwilliger is able to find the funding to help support some modicum of an inflation policy, that inflation policy be dedicated to improving those rates that are out there, consistent with what I just said. So I hope that makes sense. I can go into this more vigor and detail if you really want me to. But I think it's always been kind of implicit that that's the way it should work. And what I'm suggesting right now, is, especially in honoring what we were able to achieve in the work group, is to let's agree that that's an important step, a strategy for the future to try to contain variances in methodologies. And let's make it explicit that really, if you want to look at the substance of this, look at the last sentence just before the table. That's what I asked Mr. Chair for. That's what Mr. Melhoff helped me to engineer for your consideration.
Could you read that letter, or that sentence, Mr. Dosh?
I sure can, sir. It is the intent of the JCA that the total $28,032,122 in appropriated funding for provider inflation be used to increase provider reimbursement rates. That was my ask. And I tried to state it as simply and as generally as possible so that the agencies have the latitude they need to make it conform with state and federal policy that may govern rates. But the basic message is there. That's what I'm asking for your consideration. And I'm also recognizing that maybe it's a good thing to show that intent now. We are kind of at the epoch of some change in state government, looking ahead to the election period. Who knows what we'll see in the future for changes legislatively or administratively. The need that we are addressing collaterally will always be there. And so I just wanted to share with you, that's part of my idea for solution, is to keep the methodologies as relevant and as free from fluctuation as possible by keeping the rates tracking with actual experienced inflation. That's, all of you that run businesses know that's a business principle, not to overrun, not to allow your costs to overrun your revenues. And that's our way of accessing the allocation. So, subject to your questions, and I think there probably are some others that would like to testify too. I would end by saying that I did run this past my provider colleagues. Unfortunately, a lot of them have left town already, but I think that there's general consensus for this. I'm not aware that this is controversial, but maybe it wouldn't be the first time that I was unaware of a controversy that I generated. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Dosh. We have 3 minutes for Me Too's and other proponents, and then Commissioner Terwilliger.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. Mark Dayock, Executive Director of the South Dakota Healthcare Association, representing the vast majority of long-term care providers across our state. I'll be very brief. I do agree with most everything that my colleague has shared with you, but just want to give a special thank you once again to the chairman for pulling together the Medicaid group. That was so helpful. If we could continue that going forward, very, very much, I know my members would appreciate that. Absolutely in support of this letter of intent. Thank you for what you're able to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Jennifer Stalley on behalf of Children's Home Society. I'll be very brief and just back up what Mr. Dosh has said, that I think the other provider groups that are implicated in this letter of intent are in support of doing this. In simplest terms, for me, what this means is that if a current rate for a Children's Home Society service right now is $100, the rate will be set for on July 1st of 2026 of this year. The rate will move to $100.40. That's just helpful for us. I think that's your intent. This makes it explicit, and it's helpful for those of us who are providing the services to have that clear direction so that we can budget just like you try to budget for the services that you're in charge of covering as the legislature. So we would lend our support to Mr. Dosh's comments.
Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, Alan Solano, Monument Health, Rapid City. Just want to give a me too. Just another analogy that I always used when I was running the Community Mental Health Center. Oftentimes the allocation is the bucket, and so you fill the bucket with the dollars that you allocate for the services. The reimbursement rates are really the ladle. And so if we allocate more dollars but we don't change the size of the label, you get the analogy of how difficult that becomes for agencies to be able to actually fully utilize those funds that you've allocated. Appreciate the work group. Appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Me Too's? Any other Me Too's? Online, very quickly, Mr. Cross.
Good morning, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. Dan Cross with representing Community Support Providers of South Dakota. And just want to give a me too. We completely agree with Terry Dosh's statements. And we also, again, want to thank the committee for doing those Medicaid work groups. It was a great way to get the conversation going and to provide further education. So with that, me too from Community Support Providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Terwilliger, can I have you come up, please, for comments, clarification?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jim Terwilliger with the Bureau of Finance and Management. I don't have any concerns with this letter of intent. I think it just clarifies the provider inflation that was appropriated through the budget process.
Thank you. Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Any opponents? Seeing none? We were discussion from and/or action from the committee. Representative Colbeck.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make a comment, and first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Chair and Co-Chair, for putting together this work group that we had, and I know that Representative Muckey's not sitting over there right now, but I learned more in the few hours that we spent in that committee from all the different entities that are involved with this here. And I've been on this appropriations committee, this is my 8th year, and I never got to learn and go into depth and learn exactly what a lot of them were doing, because most of the time we hear just from the department heads and a couple of other people. It was really a great work group, great experience for me, and I highly would like to see everybody vote yes on this letter of intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Open it up for motions, action.
Mr. Chairman?
I move,
Representative Colbeck.
I move to, move the letter of intent for the, I gotta get it right here. The letter of intent regarding opioid, no, it's not the right one.
Provider inflation.
Whatever letter of intent we're on, I'll.
Provider inflation of 1.4%.
I got 2 minutes in front of me.
Second by Senator Miskimmons. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore. Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Voida. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster.
Aye.
Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zigmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas.
Motion to adopt the letter of intent for provider inflation of 1.4% hereby passes. On veto day, we're going to look at our schedule. We're going to start scheduling for the year. And anything else for the good of the cause? Entertain a motion. Senator Voida. Second by Representative Colbeck to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.